Emma Zimmermann clutched her torn dress against her chest as the dust from the departing wagon settled on the lonely Texas trail. The man who had promised to marry her, who had taken her across half the continent with sweet words and false promises, had just traded her to a stranger for a dappled mare and ridden away without a backward glance. The year was 1878, and in the vast expanse of the untamed West, a woman alone was as good as dead. "He sold me for a horse," she whispered, her voice breaking as the towering cowboy approached, leading his own magnificent stallion by the reins. His weathered face softened beneath the shadow of his hat. "Then you'll ride mine and never walk again," he said, extending a calloused hand that promised something she'd never expected to find in this merciless land kindness. Emma stepped back, suspicion flaring in her eyes. "What kind of fool do you take me for, mister? I've had my fill of men's promises." "Jack Moreland," he said simply. "I own the Double M Ranch 10 miles west of Lordsburg, New Mexico territory. I didn't come to buy a woman, I came to buy a horse." His blue eyes held steady. "But I won't leave you stranded. That's not how my mother raised me. And what do you expect in return?" Emma's voice was sharp with the bitter lessons of the past months. Jack's expression remained calm. "Nothing you're not willing to give. I've got a ranch house with a spare room. You can stay until you figure out your next steps. After that, it's your choice." Emma glanced down the empty trail, then back at the tall stranger. At 22, she had already learned that choices for women were limited in this world. She could die alone in the wilderness, find work in some mining camp saloon, or take this man's offer. "I'm Emma Zimmermann," she finally said, accepting his hand. "Well, Miss Zimmermann," Jack replied, helping her onto the back of his stallion, "welcome to the New Mexico territory." The journey to Jack's ranch took them through rugged landscapes painted gold by the setting sun. Emma clung to the saddle horn, careful to maintain distance from the stranger whose back was rigid with apparent discomfort at their proximity. "You're not from around here," Jack observed as they crested a ridge that revealed the sprawling valley below. "Philadelphia," Emma answered. "Charles, the man who—" She couldn't finish. "The man who traded you for a horse," Jack finished grimly. "I was a teacher," she continued, determined not to cry. "Charles came through town last winter, speaking of adventure and opportunity in the West. He said he had land, cattle. He promised marriage once we reached his homestead." Jack's shoulders tensed. "There's a special place in hell for men like that." As darkness fell, the outline of a substantial ranch house appeared on the horizon. Unlike the crude shacks Emma had seen during their journey west, this was a proper home with glass windows and a stone chimney sending smoke curling into the evening sky. "That's the Double M," Jack said with unmistakable pride. "Built it myself, every board and nail." The ranch house stood as the centerpiece of a working cattle operation, with corrals, a barn, and several outbuildings. As they approached, a dog began barking and a figure emerged onto the porch. "That's Maria Vasquez," Jack explained. "She comes up from town 3 times a week to cook and clean. Her husband works my cattle." The older Mexican woman's eyes widened as Jack helped Emma dismount. "Señor Jack, who is this?" Maria exclaimed, her gaze taking in Emma's disheveled appearance. "Miss Zimmermann needs a place to stay, Maria," Jack replied simply. "Can you show her to the spare room and find her something to wear? I'll see to the horses." Maria's expression softened with understanding. She had seen many hardship cases in this land. "Come, señorita. You look like you could use a hot meal and a bath." Inside, the ranch house surprised Emma with its comfort. Polished wooden floors, sturdy furniture, and shelves lined with books spoke of permanence and civilization in this wild country. Maria led her to a small but clean bedroom with a real feather mattress. "Senor Jack is a good man," Maria said as she poured steaming water into a hip bath. "Not like some. He treats people fair." "How long have you worked for him?" Emma asked, eyeing the bath with longing. "5 years, since he came here with nothing but dreams and strong hands." Maria laid out a simple dress. "This belonged to his sister before she married and moved to California. It should fit well enough until we can make you something proper." After washing away the dust and humiliation of the day, Emma found herself sitting at a large wooden table while Maria served a hearty stew. Jack entered, his tall frame filling the doorway, hat in hand and hair damp from his own washing up. "Feel better?" he asked, taking a seat across from her. Emma nodded, suddenly self-conscious in the borrowed dress. "Thank you for your hospitality, Mr. Moreland. I won't impose for long." Jack's eyes met hers. "Lordsburg is 30 miles from here, Miss Zimmermann. The nearest stagecoach stop is there, but there's no rush. Winter's coming and traveling will be harder soon." Emma recognized the practical truth in his words. "I can earn my keep. I notice you have books. Are you educated, Mr. Moreland?" A smile touched his lips. "West Point graduate. Before I decided cattle suited me better than soldiering." "An academy man," she said with surprise. "What brought you to this wilderness?" "Same thing that brings most men west. A chance to build something that's mine." He paused, studying her. "You said you were a teacher." "Yes, mathematics and literature at a girls' school." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "There's a shortage of teachers in these parts. Lordsburg has been trying to establish a proper school for years." For the first time since Charles had betrayed her, Emma felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps there was a place for her in this harsh land after all. As the days passed, Emma settled into the rhythm of ranch life. She helped Maria with household tasks and spent hours exploring Jack's impressive library. Though he was often gone from dawn until dusk, working with his cattle and men, the evenings found them sharing meals and conversation. Jack, she discovered, was 30 years old, the son of a Virginia cavalry officer who had died fighting for the Confederacy. After graduating from West Point, he had served briefly on the frontier, before resigning his commission to pursue his dream of ranching. "My commanding officer thought I was mad," Jack confessed one evening as they sat before the fire. "Trading a military career for the uncertainty of raising cattle." "Yet you've built all this," Emma observed, gesturing to the comfortable home around them. "Not without struggles." "First winter, I nearly lost everything to cold and wolves. Second year, rustlers took half my herd." His face hardened at the memory. "But a man either perseveres or perishes out here." A week turned into 2, and Emma found herself watching for Jack's return each evening. She began keeping a journal, recording her observations of this new world and the enigmatic man who had rescued her. One morning, as Emma helped Maria hang washing in the crisp autumn air, riders approached. 3 men, dusty from the trail, led by a distinguished-looking gentleman in a black coat. "That's Judge Harmon," Maria whispered. "From Lordsburg, very important man." Jack emerged from the barn to greet the visitors. After a brief conversation, he gestured toward the house. Emma smoothed her borrowed dress nervously as Jack led the men to the porch. "Miss Zimmermann," Jack said formally, "this is Judge William Harmon and his associates from Lordsburg. Judge, this is Miss Emma Zimmermann." The judge removed his hat. "A pleasure, Miss Zimmermann. Jack has told me of your situation, a deplorable business." His keen eyes appraised her. "I understand you were a teacher back east." "Yes, sir. For 3 years. Our town has been attempting to establish a proper school," the judge continued. "We have nearly 30 children in need of education, but no qualified instructor. If you're interested, the town council would be pleased to offer you the position." Emma's heart quickened. "I would be most grateful for the opportunity, Judge Harmon." "Excellent," the judge beamed. "We can offer room and board with the Peterson family plus a modest salary." "When might you be available to start?" Emma glanced at Jack, whose expression remained impassive. "I wouldn't want to impose on Mr. Moreland's hospitality any longer than necessary." "No imposition," Jack said quietly, "but Lordsburg would offer you a fresh start, Miss Zimmermann. A chance to resume your profession." It was decided that Jack would bring Emma to town the following week to meet the town council and the Peterson family. As the judge and his companions departed, Emma turned to thank Jack, only to find him already striding back to the corral, his shoulders set in a rigid line. That evening, Jack was unusually quiet during supper. When Emma attempted conversation, his responses were polite but brief. After the meal, he excused himself to check on a sick calf, leaving Emma confused by his sudden coolness. The next morning, Emma found Jack repairing a fence near the house. Gathering her courage, she approached him directly. "Have I offended you in some way, Mr. Moreland?" Jack looked up, surprised. "Not at all, Miss Zimmermann. Why would you think that? You've barely spoken 2 words since Judge Harmon's visit. If you're eager to have your home to yourself again, it's not that," Jack interrupted, then sighed. "I apologize for my poor manners. I'm pleased you found a position worthy of your talents, truly." Emma studied his face, sensing there was more he wasn't saying. But Jack hesitated, then met her gaze directly. "I've grown accustomed to your company, Miss Zimmermann. These past weeks have been pleasant, that's all." Before Emma could respond, one of the ranch hands galloped up with urgent news about a break in the fencing on the north pasture. Jack excused himself, leaving Emma to ponder his words and the strange flutter they had caused in her heart. The following days brought a flurry of activity as Emma prepared for her new position. Maria helped her alter several of Jack's sister's dresses to fit properly, while Jack himself built a small wooden trunk to hold her meager possessions. On the day before their planned trip to Lordsburg, Jack proposed they ride to a nearby mesa that offered spectacular views of the surrounding country. Emma, who had gradually become comfortable on horseback, readily agreed. They rode in companionable silence through golden grasslands dotted with yucca and mesquite. Jack pointed out landmarks, a distant mountain range, the silver ribbon of the river that sustained life in this arid land, the trail that led eventually to Lordsburg. At the summit of the mesa, they dismounted and stood side by side, gazing at the vast panorama. "It's beautiful," Emma breathed, "in a way I never imagined the West could be." "It grows on you," Jack agreed. "I can't imagine living anywhere else now." Emma glanced at his profile, strong and weathered by sun and wind. "Thank you for bringing me here, for everything." Jack turned to face her. "Emma," he said, using her given name for the first time, "I need to tell you something before you leave tomorrow." Her pulse quickened at his serious tone. "Yes, when I found you on that trail, when that worthless excuse for a man traded you like cattle." Jack's jaw tightened. "I wanted to go after him, to make him pay for treating any woman that way." "Why didn't you?" "Because you needed help more than he needed punishment." Jack took a deep breath. "I didn't expect to find myself caring what happened to you beyond that day, but I do care, Emma, more than is probably proper, given the circumstances." Emma stood very still, hardly daring to breathe. "What are you saying, Jack?" "I'm saying that if you go to Lordsburg tomorrow, I'll respect your decision. You deserve the chance to rebuild your life on your own terms." His blue eyes held hers steadily. "But if you wanted to stay at the Double M, there would always be a place for you, not as a guest or hired help, but as—" "As what?" Emma whispered, though she already knew the answer, could see it in the vulnerability that had replaced his usual confidence. as my wife if you could ever consider such a thing. Not now, he added quickly. I wouldn't expect an answer now. But perhaps in time, if you came to feel even a fraction of what I feel for you. Emma looked away, overwhelmed by his declaration. After Charles's betrayal, she had sworn never to trust a man's promises again. Yet Jack Moreland had proven himself different in every way, honorable, kind, respectful of her choices. Jack, she began carefully, I'm only just beginning to find my footing again. I need time. I understand, he said quietly, and I meant what I said about Lordsburg. The teaching position would be good for you, and the Petersons are fine people. They rode back to the ranch in thoughtful silence, each contemplating the crossroads they had reached. That night, Emma lay awake long into the night, weighing her options and examining her feelings for the man who had rescued her from abandonment, only to risk his own heart. Morning brought clarity. As Jack loaded her small trunk into the wagon for the journey to Lordsburg, Emma approached him with steady resolve. I've made my decision, she announced. Jack straightened, his expression carefully neutral. And what have you decided, Miss Zimmermann? I think, she said with a small smile, that the children of Lordsburg will have to wait for their teacher. Hope dawned in Jack's eyes. Emma, I'm not ready for marriage, she said firmly. Not yet, but I'm not ready to leave this ranch either, or you. Emma took a deep breath. If your offer of time still stands, I'd like to stay and see what might develop between us. The smile that transformed Jack's face was like sunrise breaking over the mesa. Nothing would make me happier. He took her hand gently. We'll take all the time you need. As autumn deepened into winter, Emma found her place at the Double M. She took over the household accounts, organized Jack's library, and began teaching the Vasquez children and several other ranch hands' families 3 afternoons a week in the ranch house kitchen. Jack courted her with patient determination, bringing wildflowers when he returned from checking the herds, reading aloud with her in the evenings, teaching her to shoot a rifle for protection, and always treating her with a respect that healed the wounds Charles had inflicted. Their first kiss came on Christmas Eve, beside a juniper tree Jack had cut and decorated in the frontier tradition. It was gentle, questioning, and filled with promise, nothing like Charles's demanding embraces. I'm falling in love with you, Emma Zimmermann, Jack whispered against her hair. I think, she admitted, I might be falling in love with you too. Winter gave way to spring, and with it came new challenges. Cattle rustlers grew bold in the territory, striking several neighboring ranches. Jack increased patrols of his property and warned Emma to remain vigilant when he was away. The threat materialized on a clear April morning. Emma was alone in the house, Jack and most of his men having ridden out at dawn to move cattle to fresh grazing land. The sound of approaching horses drew her to the window, where she spotted 4 rough-looking men riding toward the house. Remembering Jack's instructions, Emma quickly retrieved the Winchester rifle from beside the door. She stepped onto the porch, weapon raised. This is private property, she called out firmly. State your business. The leader, a scar-faced man with cold eyes, reined in his horse. Well, Moreland's got himself a wildcat, he grinned, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. We're just looking for some hospitality, madam. Maybe something to eat before we continue on our way. Emma's grip tightened on the rifle. Mr. Moreland isn't home. I suggest you find hospitality elsewhere. The man's grin vanished. That's not very neighborly. Boys, I think the lady needs a lesson in Western manners. As the men dismounted, Emma fired a warning shot that kicked up dust at their feet. The next one won't miss, she promised, though her heart was hammering. The leader's hand moved toward his pistol, but before he could draw, a shot rang out from behind the house. The man howled, clutching his shoulder as blood blossomed on his shirt. "The lady told you to move on," came Jack's voice as he emerged from behind the barn, rifle raised. Two of his ranch hands appeared from different directions, weapons trained on the intruders. The confrontation ended quickly. The wounded man was disarmed, and his companions surrendered without further resistance. They were a notorious gang of rustlers, Jack explained later, wanted in 3 territories. "How did you know to come back?" Emma asked as they watched the sheriff from Lordsburg lead the prisoners away the following day. "I didn't," Jack admitted. "I forgot some papers I needed, pure luck or providence." His eyes were troubled as he looked at her. "If I hadn't returned when I did." Emma touched his arm. "But you did." "And I was ready to defend myself, thanks to your teaching." Jack covered her hand with his. "You're a remarkable woman, Emma Zimmermann. Most would have collapsed with fright. Instead, you faced down 4 armed men without flinching." "I've discovered I'm stronger than I knew," Emma said thoughtfully. "Perhaps that's what the West does to people, reveals their true nature." That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the landscape in fiery hues, Emma made her decision. "Jack," she said quietly, "I don't want to wait any longer." He turned to her, a question in his eyes. "Ask me again," she urged. "What you asked me that day on the mesa." Understanding dawned on his face. Jack took her hands in his. "Emma Zimmermann, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," she answered simply. "With all my heart, yes." They were married 2 weeks later in Lordsburg's small church, with Judge Harmon officiating and the townsfolk turning out to witness the union of the respected rancher and the Eastern lady, who had arrived under such unusual circumstances. "She said he sold her for a horse," Emma overheard one woman whisper to another as they filed into the church. Jack, standing tall and handsome in his best suit, leaned down to murmur in her ear, "And I said you'd ride mine and never walk again." His blue eyes crinkled with affection. "Best trade I ever made, Mrs. Moreland." Summer brought prosperity to the Double M. The cattle thrived, and Jack's reputation as one of the territory's most successful ranchers grew. Emma wrote to her family in Philadelphia, explaining her new life and inviting them to visit. To her surprise and delight, her younger sister responded with plans to travel west in the autumn. "Will they approve of me?" Jack asked one evening as they discussed the upcoming visit. An ex-soldier turned cattleman might not be what they envisioned for their daughter. Emma smiled. "They'll see what I see, a good man who has built something remarkable in this wild land. A man who treats his wife as a partner, not a possession." "Is that how you see our marriage? A partnership, isn't it?" Emma challenged gently. "You consult me on ranch matters, I've taken over the bookkeeping, and together we're planning for the future." Jack pulled her close. "You've changed me, Emma. Changed how I see this place, this life." "As you've changed me," she replied, resting her head against his chest. "I never imagined I could find happiness here after what Charles did. But you showed me that one man's betrayal doesn't define all men." In August, a letter arrived from Judge Harmon, once again offering Emma the teaching position in Lordsburg, this time with the flexibility to remain living at the ranch. After discussing it with Jack, Emma accepted. 3 days a week, Jack or one of the ranch hands would drive her to town, where she taught children of all ages in a one-room schoolhouse. The work fulfilled her in ways she had missed, while her evenings and weekends at the ranch with Jack provided the home she had come to cherish. It was an unconventional arrangement for the times, but one that suited them perfectly. Autumn brought Emma's sister Rebecca to the Double M, her Eastern sensibilities initially shocked by the rugged realities of ranch life. But like Emma before her, she soon adapted, even developing an interest in the young doctor who had recently set up practice in Lordsburg. I see why you stayed, Rebecca confessed as the sisters watched Jack breaking a spirited colt in the corral. There's something compelling about a man who can tame this wilderness. Emma smiled. It wasn't just Jack. It was finding my own strength, learning that I could build a meaningful life here. The year turned again, and with spring came the news Emma had been both hoping for and anxiously anticipating. She was with child. Jack's joy knew no bounds. He immediately began planning expansions to the house and dreaming of a son or daughter to inherit the ranch he had built from nothing. What if the baby comes early? Emma worried one night as they lay together. The doctor is so far away. Then Maria will help deliver our child as she's done for a dozen women in the territory, Jack assured her, and I'll be right beside you. Their son, James William Moreland, arrived on a stormy November night in 1879, with Maria indeed serving as midwife and Jack pacing anxiously, until the first cry announced his son's entry into the world. "He has your eyes," Emma whispered as Jack held his son for the first time, awe transforming his weathered face. "And your determination," Jack replied, noting the infant's strong grip on his finger. "He'll need it in this country. With motherhood came new challenges and joys." Emma continued teaching, now with young James accompanying her to the schoolhouse, where he became the unofficial mascot of her classroom. The ranch prospered, allowing Jack to hire additional hands and Emma to establish a small lending library for the surrounding homesteads. In the summer of 1881, Charles Bennett rode into Lordsburg. Emma, dropping off books at the general store, froze at the sight of the man who had sold her for a horse 3 years earlier. He had aged poorly, his once handsome face now bloated and marked by dissipation. "Emma," he said incredulously, dismounting from a tired-looking mule. "Emma Wright, is that really you, Moreland?" she corrected coldly. "Emma Moreland now." Charles's eyes narrowed. "So you found yourself another protector. How convenient. I found a husband, Mr. Bennett. A man of honor who treats me as an equal, not merchandise to be traded." Charles stepped closer, whiskey fumes preceding him. "Now, Emma, that's water under the bridge. I was in a tight spot that day. Surely you understand. Step back from my wife," came Jack's steady voice. He had entered the store behind Charles, little James perched on his shoulder. Charles turned, sizing up the tall rancher and the child who was unmistakably his son. Something in Jack's calm, confident stance made him reconsider whatever scheme he had been formulating. "No harm meant," Charles muttered, backing away. "Just saying hello to an old acquaintance." "Say goodbye instead," Jack suggested, his tone pleasant but his eyes hard as flint. After Charles slunk away, Emma released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you," she said quietly. Jack shook his head. "No need for thanks between us." He touched her cheek gently. "Are you all right?" "Better than all right," Emma replied with sudden clarity. "Seeing him again made me realize how completely I've moved beyond that part of my life. He has no power over me anymore." That evening, as they sat on their porch watching little James toddle after fireflies in the gathering dusk, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. "You ever regret it?" she asked Jack. "Taking in a stranded woman that day, bringing a stranger into your home." Jack's arm tightened around her shoulders. "Not for a single moment. You brought something to the double M that it was missing, that I was missing without even knowing it." "And what was that?" "Purpose beyond myself. Before you, I was building this ranch to prove I could succeed where others failed, to make my mark on this land." Jack gazed out at the property that had flourished under their joint care. "Now I'm building a legacy for our son, for any other children we might be blessed with. Creating not just a successful ranch, but a home." Emma leaned into his embrace, watching their son's delighted exploration of the world around him. "From the moment you found me on that trail, you treated me with dignity when I had every reason to expect the worst from men. You gave me choices when I thought all my choices had been taken away. You deserved nothing less," Jack said simply. "And now look at us," Emma marveled. "Teachers, ranchers, parents. I never imagined my life taking this path." "Regrets?" Jack asked, echoing her earlier question. Emma shook her head firmly. "Not one. Even Charles's betrayal brought me here to you and James and this life we've built together." She smiled up at her husband. "He sold me for a horse, but in doing so, he gave me the greatest gift imaginable." "And what was that?" Jack asked, though the tenderness in his eyes suggested he already knew the answer. "Freedom," Emma said softly. "Freedom to discover my own strength, to find a love based on respect and partnership, to build a life that's truly mine, truly ours." As darkness settled over the New Mexico landscape, Jack Moreland gathered his wife and son close, thankful for the twist of fate that had placed Emma in his path that day, and for the courage they had both shown in building a life together in this beautiful, unforgiving land. By 1885, the Double M Ranch had expanded to become one of the most successful operations in the territory. Emma had given birth to a daughter, Elizabeth Maria Moreland, who at 3 years old already showed the same determination as her mother and the same love for the land as her father. James, now 6, had started school in Lordsburg, where Emma still taught 3 days a week. The boy was already showing aptitude for mathematics and an uncanny ability with horses that made Jack beam with pride. On the anniversary of their meeting, Jack surprised Emma with a special gift, the deed to a new schoolhouse being built on the edge of their property, designed to serve the children of the ranch workers and neighboring homesteads. "You won't have to travel to town anymore," he explained as Emma examined the architectural drawings. "And you can expand your teaching to include more subjects. Music, perhaps. I know you've missed your piano." "Jack Moreland," Emma said, tears welling in her eyes. "How did I get so fortunate as to find a man who understands me so completely?" "I believe," he replied with the slow smile that still made her heart skip a beat, "it had something to do with a horse trade." That evening, as they sat together on the porch of their expanded home, watching their children play in the yard under Maria's watchful eye, Emma reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment of contentment. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" she asked, leaning against Jack's shoulder. "That you'd ride mine and never walk again," Jack recalled, taking her hand in his. Emma smiled. "A promise kept, Mr. Moreland, and one I intend to keep for all our days together, Mrs. Moreland," Jack replied, sealing his words with a kiss as the sun set over their thriving ranch, painting the New Mexico sky with the same fiery promise that had brought them together and would sustain them through all the years to come.